The Northwood High Gym was buzzing with the electric energy of a pep rally, but nobody was really paying attention to the cheerleaders. All eyes were glued to the center mat. On it stood Leo and Kenji, the school's martial arts team superstars, better known as the Twin Dragons. They were identical in almost every way: lean, muscular, and sharp. The black belts tied around their waist told you everything you needed to know about their skill. They just finished a wild display of high-flying kicks and synchronized moves that had the whole student body roaring. Their coach, beaming with pride, grabbed a microphone. "How about that for school spirit? Let's give it up for the Twin Dragons." As the applause died down, Leo, always the showman, snatched the mic. "Thank you. Thank you. We love this school. But you know, all this," he said, gesturing to their pristine uniforms and the polished floor. "It doesn't just clean itself." A few confused chuckles rippled through the crowd. Leo's eyes scanned the gym and locked onto a man standing quietly by the bleachers, a big yellow mop bucket at his side. It was Mark, the school janitor. Next to him stood his 10-year-old daughter, Maya, clutching a fantasy novel. She'd been watching the whole thing with wide, admiring eyes. "Hey, mop man!" Kenji shouted into the mic, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. "We make the mess, you clean it up. That's the deal, right?" The students, feeding off the twins' ego, erupted in laughter. Mark stood perfectly still, his face a blank mask. His only instinct was to put a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. He was used to being invisible. A ghost student looked right through in the hallways. But this was different. This was public, and it was right in front of his daughter. Leo wasn't finished. "I've got an idea," he announced, a nasty glint in his eye. "Let's see if our janitor can do more than just push a broom. How about you step onto the mat with us, old man? Show us what you've got." The challenge hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. The laughter faded, replaced by a flood of murmurs and the unmistakable glow of dozens of phones being raised to record. Mark looked from the arrogant faces of the twins to the shocked and curious students. But the only face that mattered was Maya's. Her book was forgotten, her little hands clutching her father's pant leg, her eyes swimming with fear and embarrassment. That look pierced Mark's heart deeper than any insult ever could. And in that one, silent, painful moment, he made a decision. Mark was a quiet man. His life ran on a simple, repeating loop. Wake before dawn, make Maya breakfast, walk her to school, clean up other people's messes, pick her up, make dinner, read her a story, and fall into bed exhausted. He was a single dad, and his entire world revolved around his daughter. He worked this job, a job where he was constantly overlooked and sometimes disrespected, because it meant he could always be there for her. It was a willing sacrifice, a way to bury a past he never, ever talked about. I think you boys have had your fun," Mark said, his voice low but steady, hiding the storm brewing inside him. "I'm just here to do my job. Let's not cause any trouble." "What's the matter, old man? Scared you'll chip a nail?" Kenji taunted, strutting around the mat. "We're not gonna hurt you much. We just want to see if you can sweep the leg as good as you sweep the floors." More laughter. Mark felt Maya flinch beside him. He looked down at her, and the shame on her face was like a punch to the gut. She idolized him. To her, he wasn't just a janitor. He was a man who could fix any broken toy, tell the best bedtime stories, and make the whole world feel safe. Now, she was watching him get publicly humiliated, and he could practically see her perfect image of him start to crack. He remembered the promise he'd made to his late wife years ago in a quiet, sterile hospital room. "Protect her, Mark," she had whispered. "Teach her to be strong, but more than that, teach her to be good." Was backing down the right lesson here? Was letting these arrogant kids define his worth in front of his daughter what a good father did? He knew it wasn't. Strength wasn't just about avoiding fights. Sometimes, real strength means facing them head-on for the right reasons. He looked at the twins, then at the school's principal, Mr. Davidson, who was hovering nervously, clearly having no idea how to shut this down. Finally, his eyes went back to Maya. He gave her a small, almost invisible nod. A silent message just for her. Straightening his back, Mark let go of his daughter's shoulder and took a step forward. The gym, which had been buzzing with whispers, fell completely silent. Every single eye was on the janitor. "All right," Mark said, his voice ringing with a calm authority no one had ever heard from him before. "I accept your challenge." A shockwave rippled through the students. The twins shot each other a look of pure, triumphant disbelief. "But," Mark added, holding up a hand, "we'd do it on my terms." Leo and Kenji puffed out their chests, their arrogance flooding back. "Your terms?" Leo scoffed. "What are you gonna do? Challenge us to a mop-off?" Mark ignored the jab. He walked slowly to the center of the mat, his worn work boots making soft, deliberate sounds on the floor. He looked less like a man about to fight and more like a professor about to teach a lesson. "Here's my condition," Mark stated, his voice carrying to every corner of the now silent gym. "No strikes, no punches, no kicks. We will not try to hurt each other. This isn't about aggression. It's about control. The contest is over when one person is put on the mat, unbalanced. That's it. A demonstration of skill, not a brawl." The twins just stayed at him, baffled. Then they burst out laughing. To them, a fight without strikes wasn't a fight at all. They took his condition not as a different philosophy, but as a confession of faith. "Sure, old man. Whatever you want," Kenji said, wiping a tear of laughter from his eye. "We can play patty cake if you want. The result's gonna be the same." Mr. Davidson rushed forward. "Mark, you don't have to do this. Boys, that's enough. This assembly is over." But it was too late. The crowd was hooked. The story was already going viral on live streams. A janitor challenging the school's black belt champs on his own strange terms. It was way too good to stop. Seeing it was useless, Mr. Davidson stepped back, his face a mask of pure worry. He signaled for the coach to at least get in there and officiate, to make sure things didn't get out of hand. Mark, however, was completely focused. He bent down and carefully untied his steel-toed boots, placing them neatly side by side. He then took off his blue janitor's shirt, folded it with methodical precision, and placed it on top of his boots. Underneath, a simple, faded gray t-shirt revealed a physique that wasn't bulky, but wiry and dense, like coiled rope. Faint, pale scars crisscrossed his forearms, scars no one had ever noticed before. Before turning to face the twins, he walked back to Maya. He knelt to her eye level, his expression soft but serious. "Watch closely, sweetie," he whispered, just for her. "I want you to see something important. Being strong isn't about being the loudest or toughest person in the room. It's not about showing off or hurting people to make yourself feel big. Real strength is having the courage to stand up for what's right, with honor, and protecting your dignity without having to take away someone else's. Remember that." Maya nodded, her fears slowly melting away and being replaced by a dawning sense of awe. She watched her father, this quiet, humble man she knew so well, walk back to the center of the mat. And for the first time, she saw a glimmer of the man he must have been before he was just her dad. You could cut the tension in the gym with a knife. Leo, the more aggressive of the two, decided to go first. He bowed with a mocking grin still plastered on his face. Mark returned the bow with a quiet, formal sincerity that seemed to throw Leo off for a split second. The coach gave a hesitant signal to begin. Leo exploded forward. He kept his promise of no strikes, but he lunged, planning to use his raw speed and strength to just grab Mark and slam him to the ground. He was a whirlwind of aggression, but where Leo was a storm, Mark was a deeply rooted tree. Calm, unmoving. As Leo rushed in, Mark didn't back away. He didn't even tense up. He did something that confused everyone. He moved asterisk with asterisk the attack. In one single, fluid motion, he pivoted on the ball of his foot, turning his body not away from Leo, but alongside him. He didn't block Leo's grasping hands. He met them, his palms gently guiding Leo's wrists. He was using a core principle of Aikido, the art of peace. You blend with your opponent's motion. You don't clash with it. Mark used Leo's own momentum, the very force of his attack, against him. With a subtle turn of his hips and a gentle extension of his arms, he redirected all that forward energy. Leo, expecting to hit a wall of resistance, found nothing but empty air where Mark was supposed to be. He stumbled right past, his balance shattered, and sprawled onto the mat, looking back in total confusion. He wasn't hurt. He hadn't even been pushed. It was like he had tripped over his own feet. A collective gasp swept through the gym. It was so fast, so effortless. Most people weren't even sure what they'd just seen. Leo scrambled up, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The smirk was long gone. "Lucky move," he growled, and charged again, this time coming in lower, faster, aiming for a leg sweep. And again, Mark didn't meet force with force. As the leg swept in, he simply lifted his own, letting the attack whistle harmlessly underneath. As Leo's body was overextended, Mark placed a single, steadying hand on his shoulder. It wasn't a push. It was just a point of contact, but it was enough to completely wreck Leo's balance. He went down again, tumbling into a heap. The gym was now dead silent. This wasn't a fluke. This was mastery. Kenji, seeing his brother fail so spectacularly, stepped forward. He was the smarter of the two, and he'd been watching. He realized brute force was useless. He would be strategic. He approached Mark cautiously, circling him, looking for any kind of opening. He feinted, trying to bait Mark into making a move to show his hand. Mark remained calm, his body relaxed, his eyes steady. He wasn't watching Kenji's hands or feet. He was watching his center, his asterisk intention star. He remembered his old sensei's word from a lifetime ago in a tiny dojo far away from here. Don't fight the man. Understand his energy. Guide it where it needs to go. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a man who had walked away from teaching self-defense to take on the far more important job of being a father. Kenji saw what he thought was an opening and darted in, his hands reaching to lock Mark in a hold. Mark moved with that same fluid grace. He entered the hold, not fighting it, but becoming part of it. He flowed around Kenji, his hands finding the boy's elbow and wrist. He applied a gentle, rotating pressure, a classic Aikido technique called kotegishi. There was no grunt of pain, no sound of impact. Kenji simply found his body twisting in a way he couldn't stop. His feet left the ground, and he was guided, almost gently, onto his back. Mark held the wrist lock for just a second, a position of absolute control, before letting go. The fight, if you could even call it that, was over. The twin black belts, the champions of Northwood High, had been defeated. They hadn't landed a single touch, and the janitor had barely seemed to move. He hadn't even broken a sweat. Mark stood in the center of the mat, his breathing even. He looked down at the two humble boys on the floor. Then he did the most astounding thing of all. He extended a hand to each of them, an offer of help, an offer of respect. That simple gesture was more powerful than any takedown. It was the final lesson. The gym was completely silent. It was a silence born from pure shock, from disbelief, and from a dawning, massive respect. The students just stared, their phones forgotten, as Leo and Kenji, their faces a mix of shame and awe, took Mark's offered hands and let him help them up. Mark didn't gloat. He didn't even smile. He just gave the twins a nod and then turned his back on the whole spectacle. His first and only priority was waiting for him by the bleachers. He walked directly to Maya, ignoring the stunned faces of the teachers and principal. He knelt in front of her, bringing himself down to her level. The huge, noisy gym just melted away, and for a moment, it was just the two of them again. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Maya threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "You were amazing, Daddy," she whispered, her voice choking with emotion. Mark held her tight. "Did you see, sweetie?" he said, pulling back to look her in the eyes. "I didn't hurt them. I didn't have to. You don't have to be loud to be heard, or cruel to be strong. The most important fight you'll ever win is the one to hold on to your kindness and your dignity." Just then, the humbled twins walked over, their steps hesitant. Mr. Davidson and their coach were right behind them. "Sir," Leo began, the word sir sounding completely new coming from him. I, we're sorry. Kenji nodded, unable to look Mark in the eye. That was incredible. We were disrespectful and arrogant. We were wrong. How? How did you do that? Who are you? Mark finally cracked a small, tired smile. He glanced at Maya, who was now beaming with a pride that lit up her whole face. A long time ago, I used to be a sensei. I taught Aikido, a martial art about self-defense and nonviolence, he explained. But I gave it up for a much more important title. He placed his hand on Maya's head. I became a dad. Mr. Davidson stepped forward, looking utterly astonished. Mark, I'm speechless. What you just did, that was the most powerful teachable moment I have ever witnessed at this school. You taught these boys, and all of us, a lesson about humility and respect that no textbook ever could. The spell was finally broken. A single student started clapping, then another, and another, until the entire gym erupted in a thunderous, heartfelt ovation. It wasn't the wild cheering they gave for a flashy kick. It was a roar of genuine respect for the quiet, humble man who had just shown them all what true strength really looks like. The story of the janitor who faced down the twin dragons became a Northwood High legend, but its impact went way beyond hallway gossip. The whole culture of the school started to change, subtly at first, then all at once. Mark wasn't invisible anymore. Students who used to walk right by him now greeted him by name. They'd say, "Good morning, Mr. Mark," or ask how his day was. They held doors open for him. They saw him not as a uniform, but as a person, a role model. A few weeks later, Mark was called into Mr. Davidson's office. He went in nervously, half expecting to be reprimanded for the whole thing. Instead, the principal greeted him with a huge smile. "Mark, please, sit down," Mr. Davidson said warmly. "I've been talking with the school board. What happened in that gym? It was a wake-up call for a lot of us. We have a martial arts program that teaches kids how to fight, but we've been failing to teach them why they should, or more importantly, when they shouldn't. We've been focused on belts, not character." He leaned forward, his eyes sincere. "We want to start a new after-school program. Not just another martial arts class, but something different. A program focused on conflict resolution, de-escalation, self-respect, and discipline. And Mark, there is no one we'd rather have lead it than you." Mark was stunned. He had spent years hiding that part of his life, convinced it was over for good. The idea of being a teacher again was both terrifying and thrilling. He thought about the long hours, the responsibility, but then he thought of Maya, and he thought of all the other kids at Northwood High trying to figure things out. He took the job. The first session of the Northwood Character and Resolve program was held a month later. The turnout was huge, and right there in the front row, carefully laying out the practice mats, were Leo and Kenji. They were the first two students to sign up. Their journey from arrogance to humility was the program's first and greatest success. They weren't the twin dragons anymore. They were Mark's most dedicated assistants, channeling their energy into helping others. Mark stood before the class, not in a janitor's uniform or a formal GI, but in a simple t-shirt and track pants. His daughter, Maya, sat on the sidelines, no longer just watching, but helping hand out water bottles, her face a beacon of pure pride. "Welcome, everyone," Mark began, his voice calm and steady. "The first thing you need to understand is that the skills we learn here aren't for winning fights. They are for building a life where you don't have to fight at all. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself." Mark taught everyone at Northwood High a massive lesson that day, a lesson that echoed far beyond the gym mats. He showed them that real strength isn't measured by the color of your belt or the power of your punch. It's found in humility. It's found in the courage to stand for something without stepping on others. It's found in the quiet, unshakable dignity of a loving father. He reminded an entire community that the people we overlook the most often have the most to teach us. He proved you don't need a fancy title or a powerful job to be a leader. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones working quietly in the background, the ones who clean up our messes and, in doing so, hold our world together. Mark's story shows that character is the one thing that can't be taken from you. He chose to be a father over a fighter, a caregiver over a champion. And in making that choice, he found a strength greater than any he had ever known. He proved that the most powerful person in the room isn't the one begging for the spotlight, but the one who has the courage to live by their principles, especially when no one is watching. It just goes to show, you never truly know the hidden history or the quiet strength of the people you pass by every day. Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. What did you think of Mark's incredible story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more inspirational stories that remind us of the hero inside all of us, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss what's next. Thanks for watching.